If you want to build a bigger chest and you're deciding what pec exercises to add to your program and what exercises you should avoid, you should ask yourself these questions. Does this exercise train this muscle through its full range of motion? Not the range of motion of the exercise, the range of motion of the muscle. Are the combinations of exercises I'm doing training this muscle through all of its movement patterns? Can I progressively overload on this movement long term? And finally, is this movement practical? Meaning, can I do this exercise in any gym? Is it safe? Can I do it long term? For the chest, let's first address movement patterns. There's really only 3 exercise variations needed to cover the entire chest. A horizontal press, this generally hits the entire pecs or pec major, but it doesn't specifically target one area. An incline press, which generally targets the upper pecs or the clavicular head of the pecs, with additional attention on the front delts. And third, a pec fly. This generally trains the chest through its most natural range of motion. This is generally referred to as that hugging motion of the arms. Now, to accomplish all 3 of these goals, these are the 3 best exercises for the chest in my opinion. For a horizontal press, the flat barbell bench press is king. This is a movement that's been around since day 1. Every old school bodybuilder built the foundation of their pec development off the basic bread and butter flat barbell bench press. To this day, if you walk in any gym in the world, there's a very high chance you'll find a flat bench in it. And for good reason. It's excellent for progressive overload. The average lifter can start out needing only 100 to 200 pounds, maybe even less, to start seeing strength and muscular gains. And most advanced lifters have spent their entire careers using the lift, building up to using 300 to 400 or more pounds on the bench press for reps. For me, this movement checks the boxes of progressive overload, training the target muscle, and practicality. Today, it might get a lot of hate from guys on the biomechanics bandwagon who claim it's not an effective chest exercise. But let me give you my 2 rebuttals on that argument. First, back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when guys didn't even have access to fancy equipment, all they had were barbells and dumbbells, and they all did the flat barbell bench press. And yet, all the competitive bodybuilders back then, they all had massive pecs. In fact, I'll even go as far to say that if you look at the physiques in Arnold's era, their pec development specifically was pretty much on par with all the top pro bodybuilders today. Sure, bodybuilders today are much bigger as a whole, but I'd also argue that Arnold's pec development could rival guys today that are 30, 40, or 50 pounds heavier than him. I personally don't think that chest training has made any monumental advancements in the last 50 years. The stuff that worked back then works just as good now. Time-tested, tried and true methods always work. And my second argument is, why are the guys that are always worried about biomechanics generally always smaller than the guys who just train hard? But to get to the second exercise, that would be the incline barbell press. Benching on an incline checks the boxes of training the upper pecs or targeting the clavicular head of the pecs. And it also has the added benefit of hitting those front delts very hard. It's a great exercise for progressive overload for the same reasons as the flat bench. And from a practicality standpoint, you will again find it in virtually any gym in the world. Even if the gym doesn't have an incline bench, you can grab a barbell, some plates, and an adjustable bench and throw it in a squat rack or a power rack. The key in practicality when you're selecting a movement is that you can do it in any gym, in any environment, at any time. Let's say you only trained on one fancy piece of equipment that maybe one gym in your area has. Anytime you traveled or went to a different gym, you'd be at the mercy of whatever equipment they have. I personally rather stick to the basics where I could train anywhere, anytime. Doing that will allow me to continually progress over time without having to settle or worry about an alternative. Now, incline dumbbell press here is a great variation as well, but one that I might not put in my top 3, as it has some limitations compared to a barbell. Most only apply to stronger guys, however. If you're strong, you might run into a loading issue, as most gyms don't have over 100 to maybe 120 pound dumbbells. Of course, you don't need to train that heavy. For stronger guys or someone like myself, that might call for 130 or even 140 pound dumbbells. If your gym has them and you want to use them over barbells, great, but they still come with some limitations. Many will argue that using dumbbells offer a greater range of motion compared to barbells, but when we're talking about heavier dumbbells, that's not true at all. The higher up in weight you go on the dumbbells, the bigger the size of the dumbbell gets. And when you start getting past 100-pound dumbbells, the size of them gets so big that you generally have to shorten the range of motion on the bottom, as the size of the dumbbell will actually hit your chest on the bottom. And in addition, you'll have trouble bringing the dumbbells across your body as the length of the dumbbells becomes so large. Does that make it a bad exercise? No, not at all. But it has its limitations. And it's one of the reasons that you see very strong bodybuilders generally sticking to barbells on press variations. And finally, the third exercise to tie it all in. That would be the low incline dumbbell fly. This is to fully stretch the pecs and focus on stretch-induced hypertrophy. There's no better exercise in my opinion to do that than the dumbbell fly. Pec decks and cable crossovers are great movements, but the benefits on those exercises compared to the dumbbell variation largely come from the contraction portion of the movement, not the stretch. So if I had to pick one variation, I'd pick the dumbbell fly any day. Although it's not a great movement for progressive overload. A fly variation still should be in your training program, as it trains that natural range of motion, that hugging motion of the arms. And since the two previous exercises we included in the program cover progressive overload, we've checked those boxes off. It's again a very practical movement, as you could find it in virtually any gym. All you need is access to an adjustable bench and some dumbbells. And that's really the beauty of all three of these exercises. They can be done at any gym, anywhere, anytime. And at the same time, they're all three of some of the best exercises that you can do to build bigger pecs. But what about the worst exercises you could be doing? You won't see me doing them because I practice what I preach, but it can be any of those fancy exercises that'll fade away in a few years. Things like propping up a bench in front of a cable stack and doing presses, odd angle exercises that require you to get into awkward positions, or any movement that requires lots of work to be done during the setup. And most chest press machines that you'll find in any gym are usually poor exercise selections and would definitely make the worst list. And then combine that with the fact that not every gym has the same exercise equipment. And if you train at different gyms, you won't always have access to them. I will give an honorable mention though to hammer strength equipment, as I think that they're one of the very few machines that have been able to replicate movements similar to an incline or flat barbell or dumbbell bench press. They're also safe to progressively overload on, but as popular as they are, not every gym has them. And I will actually train with them from time to time if I'm in a commercial gym that has access to them. But if I'm picking the best, I'm still going with the old school, tried and true basics, the barbell and dumbbell movements, the tools that have built some of the most impressive physiques of all time, some of the best bodybuilders in the world, the tools that have been around since the beginning, the ones that have stood the test of time. And when it comes down to it, just plain and simple, they work. And if you're looking to build more muscle and you want to do so using proven old school bodybuilding training methods, I highly recommend you check out my old school mass gain programs in the description below. And as always, if you guys want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.